Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I walk around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It's kind of a gloomy day here in suburban Chicago. It's March 15th, the Ides of March. Beware of this podcast, I guess. I'm coming to you with some impressions of games I've recently played. That's right, it's time for Shooting from the Hip, Triple Shot. I'm adding in a new feature to today's Triple Shot. Normally, Shooting from the Hip is an episode in which I give quick first impressions of games I've played for the first time recently. Well, I have a weird one for today's list. And this is a game that I played once in 2014 and once in 2019. But in neither case did it stick very well. I had to completely relearn the game when I played it this time. And in 2014, I wasn't really thinking about games in very much depth this way. And in 2019, I was at a camp out playing with my son and his friends, so I was just kind of half paying attention as I was playing. So in neither case did I actually give much attention to the game. So while I do think that I've played this game at least twice before, it feels like a first time play for me, and that is Boss Monster. So I'm going to call this a hip replacement, playing off the shooting from the hip joke, and then, hip replacement is like something you get when you're old, I guess. So this would be an out of the dust play that's so out of the dust, it's like doing a first impression again. I don't know. I'm coming up with dumb excuses to be able to talk about Boss Monster in my Shooting from the Hip episode. I could just say, here's the 3 games I want to talk about, deal with it. So, Boss Monster. This is a game from 2013 or 2012. It was a Kickstarter success, and it spawned an entire legion of follow-ups that they have a bunch of sequels, they have a bunch of additional content, they have a whole new game that came out recently called something like Boss Monster Adventures. In the premise of the game, it's done with sort of 8-bit art, so the imagery on the cards looks like screenshots from NES games. And the idea is that you are a boss inside of a dungeon, and your job is to build up a dungeon that is hard for heroes to get through, and then the heroes try to come into your dungeon, and if they get all the way through, they damage you, and if enough of them get all the way through, they damage you enough to kill you, and then you lose. Or every time a hero comes through and doesn't kill you, you kill it, and you get 1 soul. Once you've captured 10 souls, you win. That's basically the whole game. There might be a little bit more to it if you get some of the expansions, but that's the simple side of things. There's a lot of nice things to say about this game. The art is cute. The theme is fine. There is a little bit of tactics in terms of when you draw a card, your card is going to get you certain benefits, and you have to decide how you want to apply those benefits. Do you take out a room to put in a new room? Do you add a new room to the front of your dungeon? When you go to change a regular room into an advanced room, which regular room are you going to get rid of? When the heroes come out, they are going to chase, each hero is going to chase a different kind of treasure. So you have to moderate which kind of treasure you have in your dungeon. If you don't have the most of any particular kind of treasure, then you're never going to get any heroes in your dungeon, and you can lose from that. And you get these spell cards that allow you to manipulate the dungeon experience a little bit. On the downside, this game is incredibly luck-driven. The rooms that you get to add to your dungeon are determined by the cards you draw. So if you, let's say, draw several of the same kind of card, then you don't really have a way to do a better job than what you already have. I mean, you can do more than one of that room. If the heroes who come out of the deck don't match the icons that are on your rooms, then none of the heroes are going to come to your room. We played 2 games of Boss Monster, and in the first game, we had somebody who won very quickly because the first 3 or 4 rounds, every hero went to their dungeon and they killed them all. So by the end of round 3, they had 8 of the 10 souls they needed to win the game. And this was pretty much just through luck of the draw and which cards they were able to play. But again, the cards you're able to play depend a lot on the luck of the draw. In both games, I had a combination of icons that meant very few heroes came to my dungeon. You can't really specialize if you don't get the cards that would allow you to do so. So in all, I mean, I thought Boss Monster was a fine diversion. Once everybody knows how to play, it's like a 10 or 15 minute game at the most. And generally, an inoffensive 10 or 15 minute game can be a lot of fun. It doesn't really matter if the luck of the draw is a significant factor, because again, it's 10 or 15 minutes. By the time you start chafing under the bad luck you're having, the game is over. That said, there are lots of other 10 or 15 minute games that I like better. And so Boss Monster probably isn't a game I'm going to pull out with any frequency on my own. Now, I played the copy at Toggle Gaming, my local gaming meetup, but I do own a copy of this as well, which I found at Goodwill a while back. And that's, I said that I played it once in 2019. I had found Boss Monster at the Goodwill. I brought it to a camp out with my son and his friend, and they played that game a lot. They really liked it. I played once with them, and I thought it was fine, but I think they had more fun playing without me. So I was out on my ear, and they played the game by themselves after that. If you get a chance to play Boss Monster, if somebody's really eager to play it and you want to give it a try, there's no harm in it, but I probably wouldn't seek it out unless you have some special affinity for it. If you're looking for a game where you get to be in charge of a dungeon and have heroes attacking you, I would much prefer Dungeon Lords, the Vlaada Chvátil game. Although that game is incredibly high complexity and medium depth, it is a way different experience. And so, look into that before you buy, or, find the episode where I talked about that game here on this podcast. I will try to remember to link it in the show notes. Boom. All right, so that was Boss Monster. That was my hip replacement. All right, the other two games are shooting from the hip in the more traditional sense, in that they are new to me games that I played for the first time recently, and I wanted to give you an impression of them. Both of these games came in under the banner of new games that I'm buying only with my walk-in cash. Remember, one of my goals this year is to just use my sort of frivolous money to buy games and not buy games using other parts of the family spending plan. And so in January I saved up some money, or in February I saved up a little money from that walk-in cash, knowing that the pre-sale for Libertalia, Winds of Gale Crest, was going to happen at the beginning of March. And then I used some of my March money as well. So between the two, I was able to buy Libertalia, Winds of Gale Crest. And that's the second game I'm going to talk about today. So I guess this one's also kind of a hip replacement, because I have played Libertalia before. The first time I played Libertalia, I think I thought it was okay, but I was not super impressed. But I've grown a bit since then as a gamer, and I've come to really appreciate some of the things that Libertalia offers as a game experience. And frankly, I really enjoyed our play of it this time. There's a lot to love in what's happening in the game. In it, you are a pirate, a sky pirate now. So, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. Libertalia is a Paolo Mori design from 2012, in which you play pirates, and the gimmick is that at the beginning of the game, everybody's got the same cards, and then over time, you're going to use those cards to do stuff, and slowly your hand will diverge from what other people have, because you're using different cards than they are. There's a neat bit of trying to read your opponent, figuring out when they're going to play the thing they are, with the goal of trying to undermine them. But overall, it is a delightful experience and works really well. So that's the original Libertalia. The new one, Libertalia Winds of Gale Crest, Stonemaier worked with Paolo Mori to update the design. They added 10 more cards, so now there's 40 cards in the deck instead of 30. And they created two sides of the board. There is a calm side and a stormy side. And the things that are happening in the game when you're playing the calm side or the stormy side conflict with each other. So in a way that works really well. If you're playing the calm side, the game is a little bit less spiteful. It's more about getting things for yourself, a little bit less about screwing other people. The stormy side is a bit more confrontational. But the way the game plays, like I said, you start out with 40 cards in your deck. At the beginning of the game, somebody shuffles up their deck and randomly draws 6 cards. Then everyone else goes through their deck and pulls out the same 6 cards. Now you all have the same 6 cards, and now you take turns choosing and playing one of those cards each round, or each day, they call it. And those cards have powers on them that resolve in order. There are daytime powers that resolve at the beginning of the round, or beginning of the day. And then in reverse order, people collect treasures. And then the pirates who are still alive return to your ship. Pirates can be killed or discarded, and you're going to get different kinds of treasures that have different kinds of value over the course of the game. There's a lot to really, really like about this game. The art is pretty. The art design that Stonemaier went with involves anthropomorphic animals, which is a really fun way to approach a game like this. The 40 different cards give a lot of different flexibility to the kinds of things that you're going to do during the game, which is a nice change from I think it was 32 cards in the original design, so having a little bit more flexibility. And I like the ability to have a calm side and a stormy side to give you different kinds of experience. I really like the way the powers interact, and the nice thing about this game is over each game of it's probably going to feel different, because the odds of drawing 6 cards 3 times and getting the same 18 cards as you got in another game is going to be pretty slim. And even then, the odds that you got the same 6, then the same 6, then the same 6 are even smaller. So there's a lot of variety to what you're doing as you play, and I think that is going to give it a lot of legs for future play. I did go in for the nice chunky doubloons, the metal coins to use, which I think make for a nice addition to the game. Overall, it's a really delightful rejuvenation of this classic design that everybody loves, and I'm glad to have it in my collection. Looking forward to playing it more. That's Libertalia, Winds of Gale, Crest from Stonemaier Games. All right, the third game that I played also came in that same box with the Libertalia, Winds of Gale, Crest game, and that is Rolling Realms. Rolling Realms is a game by Jamie Stegmaier, the owner of Stonemaier Games and the designer of about half of their work in Rolling Realms. Rolling Realms came out of COVID. The idea was that Jamie wanted a game that he could play with his followers on live stream, and so he made a game that could be released publicly, where all you have to do is print out a couple of sheets of paper and you can play. And the idea is that everybody has these little cards that you write on, and you score points from them, and then it's a roll and write. The idea is each realm or card is inspired by one of the games designed by Stonemaier Games. So if you're a Stonemaier fan, there's a little bit of an Easter egg in there for the different kinds of cards that are there. Each card is a sort of slightly different roll and write puzzle. In some of them you are trying to collect sets, and some of them you're trying to stack numbers in order. In some of them you're multiplying numbers by other numbers. With each different kind of card, you have a slightly different puzzle that you're trying to resolve. And the way the game actually plays is that, again, kind of like Libertalia actually, one main player is going to shuffle their deck of cards and pull out 3 cards, and then everyone else pulls out those same 3 cards. And then we roll the dice 9 times, and each time, there's 2 dice. Each time you roll the dice, everybody is going to fill in the 2 numbers from their dice on one of the realm cards. So you have 3 different cards you're working on in any given round, and you have 9 rolls. When you're filling in the cards, you're able to earn coins and pumpkins, and hearts, which are 3 different kinds of currencies that you can use to get extra dice or ameliorate the dice a little bit, raise them up or down before you write them in your sheet. And those end up also just giving you points at the end if you haven't used them. So there's an interesting element of trying to build up resources that will let you do a sort of sprint for points at the end of the round. Once you've gone through 9 rolls, and then you add up your points for the 3 different realms, and you write those in the round 1 box of the score sheet, and then you're going to draw 3 more cards, and you're going to do it again. You'll do that a 3rd time, and then you're done. So over the course of the game, you're going to play 9 of the realms. I think there are 10 or 11 in the box, so you're going to play most of them every time, but not all of them. I also did throw in a couple of bucks extra to get the Libertalia bonus pack that gives you the Libertalia card for Rolling Realms as well. There's a Terra Mystica pack that I wish I had gotten, but I forgot about. Maybe at some point I'll pick that up on a future order from Stonemaier. Overall, it is a lovely game, well designed. The puzzles in each board are neat, but not entirely instinctive. That they did take a little bit of figuring out, and because there are 9 realms, the first couple plays are going to be kind of bumpy as you try to figure out how all 3 realms work each round, figure out how they interact together, figure out how to use the bonuses that you're earning from the coins and the pumpkins. There's a lot of different moving pieces to this. So I would say it's a game with light depth. There's not a ton of depth to the gameplay, but it's high complexity because you have to learn 9 different rule sets. And admittedly, I mean, maybe that's not fair. It is not 9 different rule sets. Each card scores in a slightly different way and accumulates resources in a slightly different way. Those accumulated resources all pay out the same way, so you're always going to spend your coins in the same way. You're always going to spend your hearts and your pumpkins in the same way, but you get them in different ways depending which cards you have. Some of the design choices that Stegmaier made that really work well, the fact that you're only using 3 cards each round, I think is an ideal approach to that. The fact that at the end of each round, when you get the new 3 cards, you erase everything on your boards except your score from the first round. So you never carry any resources over to the second phase, and no matter how well you did on the first phase, you're all starting from scratch on the second, which I think works really well because having that reset means everybody feels like you're on the same footing again. You get this chance to try again. The same goes for the third round. And the scores can vary wildly depending how well you do. I mean, obviously, if you do terribly in the first 2 rounds, and your opponents do really well, the odds of catching up in the third round, I don't think are great. But overall, I like the reset that happens in between rounds. I also wanted to comment for a moment. The theme is nonsense, right? There is no narrative component to this. You are not someone doing something. It is just a puzzle to do. A lot of roll and write games, that's true, and that's fine. I like the sort of light theming around the different games. That's a fun element to it. And I think for Stonemaier fans, there's a nice bit of Easter egg there. So, from a theme perspective, it's basically a puzzle game. There isn't a theme, but that's okay. It's still fun. I did notice that he did not, most of the games have the name of the game on them, but the Red Rising game, which you can tell it's the Red Rising game because of the graphic design, does not say Red Rising on it. It says the Council or something like that. My guess is that Stegmaier did not want to pay another licensing fee on Rolling Realms to be able to use the theme and identity from Red Rising on this card. And so he just, he named it something else that invokes Red Rising but doesn't specifically name it and thus require that he license it. I also think you can see that Stegmaier was finishing up the design on Libertalia, or the work on Libertalia, when he used this, because the way that you set out the cards really works like Libertalia. All in all, Libertalia Winds of Gale, Crest, and Rolling Realms are both delightful games that I'm happy to have on my shelf and looking forward to playing quite a bit more. If you get a chance to play either of them, I recommend. Libertalia is fantastic. Rolling Realms is pretty good. And if you get a chance, let me know. Have you played either of these games, or have you played Boss Monster? Have you been playing it since 2012? And you're here to tell me that I'm all wrong about its luck of the draw? You can do that by heading over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and sharing your thoughts on the game. I'd also love to hear what you think of Rolling Realms or Libertalia. Have you played the old Libertalia? Are you excited to play the new one? You can let me know those things as well by going to Board Game Geek Guild 3269. You can send me an email, brendan@rattleboxgames.com, or a direct message to Wombat929 on Board Game Geek. Thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.